being here. This is Deemer with Rasmussen Foundation, and we're going to kick it off with our first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Bockenstedt, and I'm the Executive Director of the Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. Before we get started, I wanted to kick us off with a land acknowledgement. We are gathered this morning on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascan. We recognize and express appreciation for their stewardship of these lands and for their knowledge, culture, contributions, and innovations. Thank you all for being here today. A special thanks to Margaret Salazar, the HUD Region 10 Administrator, for coming up and bringing some of this much-needed sunshine from the lower 48. We appreciate it. Although we're still in the process of renovating this property, the Trust is excited to welcome you and to see the positive change that can happen in our community when the public, private, and nonprofit sectors work together. As some of you may know, the Trust was created last year in response to the urgent need in our community to provide more affordable housing units to our most vulnerable and low-income residents. Our mission is to strengthen the community by acquiring, creating, operating, and preserving permanently affordable housing for low and extremely low-income residents, because we believe everyone deserves a safe, stable, and secure place to live, and that our community is stronger when all residents have affordable housing opportunities. Upon completing the renovation of this property, the Trust will have added over 270 new affordable housing units across 3 properties in just the last 9 months. Here at the Barrett, there are 96 units. About half of these units will be efficiencies that come with an additional sink for kitchen preparation. This property will also feature 3 large communal kitchens for the tenants living here to utilize. In addition to the Barrett, the Trust also opened the guest house in downtown Anchorage late last year, which has 126 units of affordable housing. And just down the street in the former Lakeshore Inn, the Trust opened earlier this year. It has 45 units with varying room configurations from efficiencies to 1 2-bedroom apartment. The Trust is proud of our record of working rapidly to bring affordable housing units to the market quickly. Unfortunately, too many of our neighbors in Anchorage are currently without housing or could find themselves unhoused with one missed paycheck, a broken down vehicle, or other difficulty. A recent U.S. Economic Well-Being Survey of households in the U.S. released by the Federal Reserve shows nearly 4 in 10 Americans lack enough money to cover a $400 emergency expense. And when asked about non-emergency expenses, 18% of Americans said the largest expense they could cover using only their savings was under $100. Resources to help people through these circumstances are often too slow and complicated. The Trust and all the partners you see here today are working to change that. We will continue to work and remove barriers to housing that many individuals have faced. So what does removing barriers look like in practice for us here at the Trust? Well, for one, we do not run credit checks on prospective tenants. We do not require first and last month's rent, and the security deposit will be as low as $250. We are working to help keep people who are choosing between which bill to pay have a safe place to live so they can get back on their feet. It's no secret that the housing cost in Anchorage has been increasing dramatically over the last decade. The median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Anchorage is now over $1,300 a month, not including utilities. The rising cost of housing has made it difficult for many people in Anchorage to afford a place to live. This is especially acute for low-income families and individuals. These families often have to choose between paying for housing and other essential expenses such as food, transportation, and healthcare. But affordable housing is such an important part of our economy. When people have a safe and affordable place to live, they are more likely to be able to find and keep a job, which contributes to the overall economic vitality of our community. So what more can be done to address the need for affordable housing in Anchorage? We need to continue to increase the supply of affordable housing units. This can be done by building new affordable housing units, converting existing buildings such as this into affordable housing units, and providing financial incentives to developers who build affordable housing. And I know that sounds overly simplistic and undoubtedly will require more investments from our local, state, and federal government partners. But the return on that investment will be measured not only in the dollars, but in the new opportunities it creates for people that sometimes for the first time have a safe place to call home. We should also make it easier for people to afford housing. This can be done by more quickly and efficiently distributing federal funds we receive in the form of rental assistance, access to rental vouchers, or making it easier for people to get access to affordable health care. It should also include the municipality and nonprofits taking advantage of new rules from the federal government that make them eligible to receive as much as 60% of their investment back for installing renewable energy, such as solar panels on their properties. I know we are going to take advantage of that here at this property and some of our others. This will help drive down those costs of energy, which is also a huge driver of housing affordability. Finally, before turning it over to the other speakers, I want to discuss something that many here have heard me talk about a lot over the last several months, and that is housing first doesn't mean housing only. We need to invest in supportive services. These services can help people who are struggling to afford housing to stay in their homes by providing counseling services and assistance accessing mainstream services and other community-based resources. We all believe a home is the cornerstone of individual stability, possibility, and community well-being. We strive to help build a strong community where all residents have access to safe, decent, permanently affordable housing and the opportunity to achieve their own vision of success. While there's still much work ahead of us, these new housing units are a significant step in the right direction. By continuing to work together, we can make Anchorage a more affordable place to live for everyone. Thank you.
I didn't see you run a show. Well, after that, I've got nothing left to say. He's covered all the big points. Margaret, thank you very much for bringing the 3 days of summer we're going to have this year with you. We really appreciate that. I'm sure it's going to start raining shortly until it starts snowing. So, again, after Jason spoke there, I've got nothing much to say, but I think in this room, everyone needs to take a great deal of pride in the 332 rooms or facilities, living spaces that have created with the Golden Line coming online. We're a day late here. We were supposed to start filling yesterday. We had some trouble with the computer and the keypads. I'm under the impression it's going to start being filled today. That'll get us up to about 410. And I think to the folks in this room, give yourself a good round of applause for what you've accomplished. This is truly a partnership that needs to be involved. It needs to be thorough. Even as we start looking at the new challenges or the current challenges that are growing, and that is quite frankly on the psychiatric side of things. The treatment beds, we need more of them as we build places like this and bring up these kinds of living spaces, and that's the treatment. I try to spend about an hour a day in camps. I spent, I don't know if Karen Bronga is here, but I spent about an hour with her yesterday at Chauncey, and we spoke with quite a few people, and it's a real challenge. And quite frankly, a lot of those folks do need that psychiatric care that's so essential. This is a statewide problem that needs a statewide solution. It's going to be expensive. Folks on my side of the spectrum a lot of times saying it's not our problem, ignore it. Well, guess what? The cost of ignore it is far greater than the cost of doing the right thing the right way. And just talk to the small businesses in this city. They're paying the price. And I'm just telling you, as a conservative, this needs to be dealt with clearly, forcefully, and more importantly, effectively. And with the help of HUD and other agencies and the public-private partnerships that are represented here today, I think we can, in a coordinated way, get to this. I've always supported these kinds of efforts. We need to create shelter. We need to create the expensive thing. And I haven't seen anyone from Providence here, but Providence is standing up for, what Providence is doing and standing up the high-level treatment beds that are going to be needed. We simply need more of that. I'm going to go back to the legislature again next session for another big ask, because we need a larger, a much more robust API in this state. And quite frankly, we have 40% of the population of the city, or of the state in this city, and we have about 65% of the homeless population. And the taxpayers of this city cannot be held responsible for that entire ask. And with the Assembly's help, we're going to go down to Juneau next session and ask, and hopefully by July of next year, there'll be some money flowing for the treatment beds and the other things that we need, even as we continue operations like this. So again, thank you very much. This is what public-private partnerships can do. I think working coordinatedly and effectively, we can accomplish great things together going forward. So thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. So I always like to start on a personal note. I moved to Alaska in 1997 and actually came as a unlucky fisherman in 1995. And at that time, both my mother and my sister worked in this building here at the Barrett Hotel. And so I have spent a lot of time in this building and seen it in its history over the last almost 30 years go from a bustling fisher supporting hotel and a place where communities come together to an empty and vacant building that was just deteriorating and dragging down the neighborhood. And now this is very exciting to me. So good morning. My name is Christopher Constant. I'm the chair of the Anchorage Assembly, and it is such an honor to be here today as we begin the process of opening this facility. Okay, talk louder. That's what I'm hearing. I don't have a problem with that. So as you see here, we have a number of facilities that are finally coming online, and it's starting to put proof to the theory and the belief that housing is the answer to homelessness. And here we are on the verge of hundreds of units of housing, and we need to, of course, do hundreds more because that's the answer. So the Assembly has 6 districts with 2 members per district. So that means 12 of us cover the territory from Knik, Armbridge to Portage Pass, which is an area the size of complete states in the United States, Delaware. Like, we have a responsibility over a great distance of land and people from all corners. And not just that, when you think about the size of Alaska and that we are the central hub for the state, we are providing services for an area of land that spans from California to Georgia, from Texas to Minnesota. And we're doing it with very little money, and we're doing it as scrappily as we can because we realize we have a job that has to be done. The reality is we couldn't do any of this without our partners. This public-private partnership is the answer that we've been working towards for years. Government can't be the answer. We can only be one part of the process. We have our duties to take care of. But with the partners that we have, and particularly I want to name Providence, Primera, Widener, and especially Rasmussen, who dedicated in 2019 $40 million, which really is what began this aggressive effort to provide housing, with the Berkowitz administration and their team, who continues to do this work today from a variety of perspectives. I want to give a little bit of history. We have plan after plan after plan, going back before Mayor Fink, the first Mayor Sullivan, that asked the question, what are we going to do with the homeless population in our town? Some of those plans were pretty aggressive and awful when you think about what they proposed. Plan after plan after plan. In 2009, there was a proposal to open Carlick Manor in Fairview. And that's what brought me to the table in this public process. I spoke briefly yesterday. I opposed that project, but not because of the model of housing first, because our city had decided there was only one neighborhood where all these services belong, and that was North Anchorage and Fairview. And in that conversation, I think the community started to reckon with, we can't create ghettos in this town where we put the disenfranchised and trap them in poverty for generations more. We've done that. And so now the commitment is we're going to house people, and we're going to do it in a way that spreads them across town in neighborhoods where it makes sense so that the impacts aren't destructive. And what has happened since we have made that policy change is, for the first time at the Aviator and the Guest House, we have a proven track record of organizations providing services to this population without creating disharmony in the neighborhood, without causing harm. And that's what Anchorage needs, is models that demonstrate that these services can happen in a way that don't make life worse for the people around them. And now we have the model. And with this model, we can make progress, and we can make fast progress. And that is the plan. And I am glad to be part of it. Now, I am not a religious person, but I will read just briefly one quote from the Bible. It's Ecclesiastes 3, that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. We have fought, and now it's time to work together. And we are. And that's what brings us here today. The fact that a nice stack of individuals will soon be off the street. The Golden Lion is open today. Another 80 people. In chunks of 50 and 80 and 100, we're going to solve the problem of homelessness in Anchorage. And I thank you all for your support and being here today. And oh, wait, one last thing. I'm not going to thank you for bringing the sun, Region Director Salazar. What I'm going to thank you for is there's been a bit of a robust conversation about HUD's role in funding Anchorage relative to other communities. And we have talked about this, that we feel like it's inequitable. And so part of your visit here is to have a conversation about how we address that inequity or recognize the opportunities and make a plan. And so we have had a discussion, and the approach we're talking about now is in the short term, the next 2 years. Look closely at the funding that we are receiving and figure out if we can use it more efficiently, and make sure we're using every penny that is dedicated to our town, because we have missed opportunities for lack of the resource of grant writers and people to deliver services. We got to fix that. So we're going to use our money more efficiently, and we're going to talk about new potential short-term funding so we can build the services we need to end this problem. And then finally, we're going to talk about how to fix the formula, but that is a difficult conversation that's going to take a long time. So I am so grateful you came to have this conversation with us, because it is a key link in making this successful. So thank you and welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, excellent. My name is Margaret Salazar. I'm HUD Regional Administrator serving the Pacific Northwest, which includes Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and of course, the great state of Alaska. And I am honored to be joining you here today on behalf of HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge. So when we think about homelessness, I have a few thoughts to relate to you of how we're looking at this across the Northwest and of course, across the nation. Over the last few years, we've been living the consequences of decades of underinvestment in our communities. Just back in January, HUD released our 2022 annual homelessness report to Congress, which provided point-in-time count data for 2020 to 2022. That was the first full count for our point-in-time count of homelessness since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, that count showed one piece of encouraging news, which was that nationally, during that time period, we were able to prevent an uptick in homelessness at the national level, thanks to investments made by the Biden administration and our friends in Congress. But I don't need to tell anyone in this room today that the story looks really different here in Alaska, because during that same time period, homelessness increased here by an estimated 19%, and that is more than likely an undercount, and we all recognize that. And behind each of those statistics is a real person. Behind each of those numbers is a real family, like my own, facing the chaos and trauma of our relatives moving in and out of homelessness, moving in and out of shelters, living in cars, signing up for affordable housing waiting lists and waiting and waiting and waiting and worrying about our family members' health and safety and wondering how their situation will ever be resolved. This is a humanitarian issue. But it doesn't have to be like this. In the greatest nation on earth, no person should ever have to sleep night after night on the streets or in encampments. Now, without adequate permanent housing assistance, communities often feel like the best that they can do is to manage the problem on a day-to-day basis by clearing encampments or pushing people and moving people around their cities to sleep in different locations. We understand that. We understand this is a hard problem every day. But we know that that doesn't solve the problem. It just relocates it. To solve homelessness, we must recognize and confront not only the systemic underinvestment in our communities, but the systemic injustices and inequities that have led to the problem of homelessness, especially facing our Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color in our communities. It requires us to take a housing first approach to provide housing and services to address other people's unique needs. And you stole my line about housing first isn't just housing, isn't only housing, isn't housing only, but that's okay, I forgive you. When I talk about housing first, and what we at HUD talk about housing first, I want to talk a little bit about what we mean. We don't mean housing only. We mean an approach that stays focused on our shared North Star of moving people to permanent housing solutions, moving people toward housing stability with the housing and the services that they need tailored to their unique circumstances that help people retain housing and stay stably housed, and reducing barriers to getting people into housing in the first place. That's what we mean by housing first. That's the approach you all are taking with what we're talking about today. It's very exciting. And it requires us to align our resources and to work with common purpose and with intention, efficiency, and urgency. And I've heard all of those themes today from all of our speakers, which is extremely heartening. Under the leadership of President Biden and Secretary Fudge, this administration has prioritized the work to address unsheltered homelessness through resources, technical assistance, and so much more. The truth is that we know how to solve homelessness by quickly helping individuals and families who are currently homeless obtain the stability of a home while preventing people from falling into homelessness in the first place. We know that when we reinvest relentlessly in rehousing our people, it works. We've seen that approach work. It works for veterans, where we've seen a 55% decline in homelessness at the national level since 2010. It works for families with children, youth, and for individuals. It works for individuals and people living outside and unsheltered, and it works to resolve tent encampments. I know because I've seen it work across the Pacific Northwest in my travels as I've worked with folks just like you in cities across the Northwest, communities large and small. We also know that we need to invest in creating a robust supply of housing options. So today, as we celebrate all the great work going on here in Anchorage, I have some news to share with you. We are pleased today that HUD has rolled out a new notice of fund opportunity called Pro Housing, which will make available $85 million for states and localities to put in applications to help you do the work of reducing regulatory barriers that get in the way of producing housing, help you cut red tape, and help you increase the availability of housing supply and density in your communities. We're excited about this. The grant range will be from $1 million to $10 million per community, and we encourage folks in Alaska to take advantage of that funding opportunity. This is really the first time we've ever put dollars at this scale, $85 million, to really work with you in partnership to help get more housing in the ground. So we know that we have the tools, the resources, and the federal support like never before to rehouse our people and to focus on housing supply. But it only works when communities work together for common purpose to rehouse our people and to create permanent housing stability, which is why I'm here with you today, bringing that sunshine or partial sunshine up here to Alaska. The Secretary's Award for Public Philanthropic Partnerships recognizes excellence in partnerships that have transformed relationships between sectors and led to benefits in housing and community development. I am so honored today to present this award to the Rasmussen Foundation for their work of tackling the severe shortage of affordable rental homes here in Anchorage and the lack of a coordinated system to move people experiencing homelessness into housing solutions. The Rasmussen Foundation, in collaboration with capital investors and working in partnership with the Anchorage municipality and the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness, was able to raise $75 million to tackle the affordable housing crisis in Anchorage, and that included leveraging federal dollars as part of that work. The funding was used to convert 4 hotels into homes, in addition to setting up a navigation center and substance misuse treatment center. There are an additional 52 homes under construction now, as you've already heard, and by the project's completion, this initiative will have garnered the largest increase in housing for low-income and extremely low-income households in Anchorage's history. It is truly transformational. Please give them a round of applause for that work. I had a chance to speak with the mayor last night. We heard him speak this morning about going out into encampments, talking to people, really getting to know the neighbors in our community that are experiencing this trauma. This is really difficult work. It challenges all of us every day, and it can feel sometimes very discouraging. But it's days like today when we remember that when we all come together and work for common purpose, we can make a measurable impact, not just on the individual lives of folks that are being rehoused, but creating a new kind of infrastructure in our community that's lasting, that will provide hope to so many more. So it's truly an exciting moment. And now, the best part of my job here today is to invite Rasmussen Foundation President and CEO Gretchen Guess up to receive this beautiful award. That will be a nice addition to you. Thank you for all of your leadership and the incredible team at Rasmussen Foundation. We're just honored to partner with you. Thank you. Oops. Oh my goodness.
Safety moment.
There we go.
I don't think I can fit that up there. There you go. Well, thank you, Margaret. My name is Gretchen Guest. I'm the new CEO and president of the Rasmussen Foundation. And on behalf of the board, and my board chairs here, Adam Gibbons, and my wonderful staff, we're just honored to accept this award for really all the partners and the community members that are here. We facilitated, we funded, but people had to come to the table and really start discussing this issue and really thinking about how do we do housing first. And as you said, Margaret, and what I believe, there's a family and a story behind each person. It's not a simple solution. There is no silver bullet. And only by working together and coming together do we solve these complicated issues. As was said previously, we're proud that there's going to be 332 new units in Anchorage and more to come. The Rasmussen Foundation continues their work not only in Anchorage, but statewide to work on this issue, not only on the affordable housing side, but also on the systems change that's needed. Some of us were talking last night, that's not the sexy stuff, right? But it's the needed stuff to really move folks from their situation into safe housing. Some of you know that I represented Mountain View for 6 years, and it was such a blessing. So I saw firsthand what happens with poor housing and no resources. So it was so wonderful to come back to Anchorage and see what we've done here and what we're going to do. But I also wanted to remind us of not only the people, but the people doing the work. Because those are the heroes, the folks that are reaching out to our brothers and sisters every day who are homeless, who are working on their basic needs, who are working on getting them into appropriate safe housing, and then supporting them as they stay in that housing and they move forward in their life. So with that, thank you for everyone who is part of the coalition and the work. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. May.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Meg Zalatel. I'm the Executive Director of the Anchorage Coalition Against Homelessness. First, I'd like to start by thanking Gretchen and the team at Rasmussen for their leadership and initiative to make today's event possible. Often in the midst of crisis, we forget about the importance of celebrating successes. And bringing you all here today is really a highlight of my year, quite frankly, because we often forget perspective in this work. And in that vein, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the homelessness prevention and response system. What we often fail to highlight is that yearly we see about 11,000 people engaged in the homelessness prevention and response system. Of those 11,000, less than half are people requiring emergency shelter. Thousands receive services to maintain their housing or move quickly into housing. Of these 11,000 individuals, a very low percentage become unsheltered. These numbers demonstrate that quickly accessible, affordable housing is the best investment to see change in our community and decrease the number of people experiencing homelessness. The hotel conversions targeted to low-income and extremely low-income households are a necessary part of the homelessness prevention and response system and will have a direct effect on ending homelessness in our community. Turning briefly on how we got here today, I found this quote I'd like to share with you all. If you feel safe in the area you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you feel your feet aren't quite touching the bottom, you're in just about the right place to do something exciting. That was David Bowie, a known disruptor. To close, remember, before someone experiences homelessness, they were housed. And the one thing that ends their experience of homelessness is housing. Anchorage needs roughly 2,500 additional units for low-income and extremely low-income individuals in order to end homelessness in our community. So, who's ready to get a bit out of their depth and join us to ensure that everyone can access safe, appropriate, and an affordable place to call home? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Those were really great messages, and we do have time for a few questions. We've got media here, and we also would have opportunity to interview folks one-on-one afterwards if you'd rather do it that way. But are there any questions?
Lisa, can you adjust the mic a little bit?
There we go. Is that good? A little down?
Just make sure people are talking into them. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, good.
I'm just curious who this housing is meant for. Is it for folks that are currently on the streets? Is it, who's the ideal person to be moving in here? And also, are there going to be support services available for them?
And Jason will take that. And that question was, who is this housing meant for?
Yeah, great question. So, the actual kind of mission of the trust is we only serve those that qualify under the low or extremely low income guidelines that are set by HUD. So anyone in our community that makes under 80% of the area median income would be eligible to live here. That being said, there will be a percentage of the rooms that are being reserved for those that need permanent supportive housing through the municipality's Home for Good program, and then there'll be others that have access through different types of vouchers. So it'll be kind of a mixture of folks, but all of them would be considered low income individuals here in our community.
And are there support services?
There will be support services that will be offered here. Certainly as some individuals that are part of the Home for Good or permanent supportive housing, they will have case managers that already come with the individuals. They won't necessarily be on site, but they will be checking in and talking with individuals, if not on a daily basis, weekly basis for sure.
Great. Other questions?
This may be a better question for the mayor or assembly chair, but as we're in the process of moving people from sort of low-income housing to permanent stable housing, what's the plan to sort of get that permanent stable housing? Because I know that we're in a bit of a housing crunch in Anchorage right now, low income or otherwise.
Actually, I'll grab that because that's a flawed question.
So this is permanent housing. So I think that's what's really important to remember. It may not be traditional housing, but we need to expand the different ways we think about permanent housing because we do have a housing shortage. So every one of these hotel conversions is permanent leased housing. So people can stay as long as they'd like. Now, what we'll probably see is a number of individuals stabilize and likely move on to maybe more traditional housing. Because what this provides the opportunity for without a credit check or possibly that large security deposit is the opportunity to create a good rental history, and get that leg up.
Thank you, Wesley. It is a great question. I think it needs to be recognized that the assembly that you have right now has been aggressively working on addressing the barriers to increase housing stock across the spectrum of housing. So we have eliminated some parking minimums. We have allowed for ADUs to be built on nearly any property in the municipality. We are looking at a much more aggressive proposal right now to look at the zoning code. And then we have our incentives that we have been historically utilizing to get developers building housing stock, in this area. And then again, our conversation with the secretaries and the region director are how can we use more efficiently the money we are able to receive from the federal government, our local money, to move the slider to get more housing units built across the spectrum. And so there are policy level decisions being made as we speak to increase the housing stock. And that's where we're going to work aggressively until we get to the point where Anchorage is building again.
Good questions. Emily?
I'm curious, do you have an estimate of what the housing gap really looks like for Anchorage specifically? So low income, middle, like I know that we need housing across the spectrum, right? So this is quite a lot of housing all at once and more coming next year. And I'm curious how that looks big picture with
So you're asking about more than affordable for all different income levels?
affordable, like low income specifically.
Okay. I think Meg will take that.
Sure.
So that 2,500 figure is really low income and extremely low income housing, because when we talk about ending homelessness, what we are talking about is making quickly accessible housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. So that's that number. And what we're finding, or what we've found, is we've had a lot of money around rental assistance. It is truly a unit shortage. And that's why these hotel conversions are so important, because with a sub 3% vacancy rate citywide, it's really hard for a young professional or heck, anyone to be competitive in this rental market without substantial income, be able to do first, last, security deposit. And so we're really targeting this 2,500 units of affordable housing, extremely affordable housing, quite frankly. And I guess I want to stress, it's not just affordability. It's accessibility, and it's breaking down those barriers, breaking down the barriers of rental application fees, which can run hundreds of dollars, security deposits that aren't obtainable, and then having multiple months of rent.
And Meg, is that 2,500? Is that what will be still the gap once all these housing units are online, or will these up to 400 units, counting the Golden Lion, take care of some of that?
So we like to count permanent housing units. So I would say we could probably talk about reducing that to probably about 2,250 remaining, because some of these we already counted. Some of them are online, like the guest house is already online, and some of them we count as permanent supportive housing units because we have that services overlay.
And I guess, could someone define extremely low income? Just for listeners, I've never heard that term before today, so I'm curious the difference between low income and extremely low income.
Thanks for the question about defining extremely low income. What I think would be the best thing to do is to follow up with you with the income guidelines, because HUD publishes sort of what median income, low income, and extremely low income are, and it's pegged to the median income. So extremely low income would be 30% of area median income, and low income is 60% of area. These are all very technical, so we can follow up with you with those definitions.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Round of applause for our speakers. and Jason is going to lead some tours of some of the housing units here that are open. I think I'll ask if media, if there's a large number of people who would like that, maybe we'll do it in groups. And if media would like to go, I think I'll ask if they get to go first because they may be on deadlines. And then anyone else is welcome to join after that.